All right, chat. Let's watch this new CIA Harris. Who gets rich off the poor? This video sucks. Does it suck?
There's people getting rich off this graph. What we're looking at here is the number of Americans that don't make enough money for basic survival. So like a family of four, 2 parents, 2 kids, living off of $31,000
I don't think it's possible to live on $31,000 a year as a single adult. I don't think it's possible to live off $31,000 a year as a single adult. Like you need to be like in a household with multiple other adults.
That's considered poverty in the United States, and there's millions of people who live with that kind of income. The US government spends about $1 trillion every year helping these people meet their basic needs. In recent decades, a lot of that money has been flowing through a middleman, private corporations who are supposed to be more efficient in administering this money.
So welfare is big business, and of course that's the irony of this whole thing, that there's so much money to be made from poverty.
Now, this is not easy stuff to understand. We're talking about government welfare programs and bureaucracy. Sometimes they're intentionally hard to understand, and these corporations don't really want to be known by anyone. But if you start to dig, which we've been doing, and you look deep enough into this, you start to see what all of this actually looks like, who's actually getting rich, what the incentives are within this system, where the loopholes are, and whether or not this is actually benefiting the people that it's designed to benefit. So in this video, I'm going to show you who gets rich off the poor, and I'm just going to do a few case studies that demonstrate how this works. I'll be making a list of examples here, going from what I see as the least egregious abuse of this system to the most. I am bracing myself to get sued or intimidated by the companies that I'm calling out in this video, because that's how a lot of these powerful shadowy companies work. So as always, every assertion in this video is rigorously fact-checked and in my sources. Lawyers, go check that first before you send me your cease and desist order. Thank you. And with that, let's look at who gets rich off the poor. Let's go back to this graph one last time and just zoom back to the 1950s, where you can see that the poverty rate was double what it is today. It's like 22%. This was really bad, and it led to the president at the time declaring war.
And this administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America. We shall not rest until that war is won.
So, A War on Poverty by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964. This is what that war looked like. This big line. This is social spending as a share of GDP. You can see this is where he gives this speech right here, this flat line. Social spending just skyrockets right after. The government spends tons of money for this war on poverty. That money goes towards programs like Medicare and Medicaid, food stamps, public education, which is why you see this big dip. 22% all the way down to 12, 13%. And for a time, all this spending worked. Poverty declined 30% in 5 years. But eventually, progress slowed, and the government kept spending, and people got tired of it. The economy wasn't doing well, and people were tired of subsidizing these welfare programs. And that's where this guy comes in.
I love how he describes politics in this country as like, oh, people just they were doing well and they got tired of subsidizing. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. It was a blatant racial incitement.
My friends, some years ago, the federal government declared war on poverty, and poverty won.
This is where things start to get a little bit murky, so we needed help. We got it from Ann Kim, who is an expert who literally wrote the book on this history and the modern day poverty economy, and sat down with us to talk through this history and how it works today.
Remember during the 1980s, we had this, well, no, you don't remember the 1980s. Well, during the 1980s, there was really this mythologization if that's a word, of the CEO. At the same time, the government spending was ballooning. Economic times were not that great. So Americans were not feeling particularly generous about funding social services programs. And so the CEOs were really kind of held up on a pedestal as the ones who are going to make government just as efficient as they made their own companies.
Poverty is a big business here in the United States, and the government is making decisions right now that will affect millions of people. And yet, what I've been finding is it's hard to keep up on all of this, how this stuff is being reported, and what is trustworthy and factual. Lately, Medicaid portals have been shutting down in all 50 states, thanks to a Trump administration funding freeze. This could result in millions of Americans, low-income Americans, going without political bias at all. I feel like I'm ahead of the
Brown news is sus in my opinion. Like it legitimately is sus in my opinion.
The news you're consuming. So sign up now, ground.news/Johnny Harris. Thanks Ground News for sponsoring today's video and for existing. Okay, back to our list of who gets rich off the poor. So it's the 1980s. Reagan wants to rein in all of this spending. He's also afraid that Americans are becoming too reliant on the welfare system. So he kicks off a bunch of changes that over time would lead to a fundamental shift in delivering income support to low-income populations.
They wanted to privatize Medicaid, Medicare, prisons, air traffic control.
This privatization of government spending started under Reagan, but it continued into the future administrations, especially under Bill Clinton, who helped expand it. And the fundamental shift looks like this. We're going to be using a graphic like this, not only for right now, but for the future cases of how this works today. Taxpayers give money to the government. The government used to give money to citizens in need directly. But after these reforms, the money would start to be distributed to the states. The states would then hire for-profit companies to do the complicated work of
Look at how dumb this is. Look how fucking stupid this is. This is privatization. We're going to add 2 more layers of bureaucracy before we help people.
Distributing this money to eligible people in need. They would be responsible for making sure that no one's abusing the system, determining who's eligible and who's not. And the thinking here was that the government is much less efficient than private companies.
Now that's just a religious belief. That's just a religious belief. It's not based on facts. It's just we have this catechism. Government is less efficient than private companies, so we're going to privatize government services and functions to private companies, and that's going to save us money. How? How is that going to save you money? That is never explained. And guess what? When you measure it, it doesn't.
And that is true in most cases. And that if we apply business and the free market and profit motives to welfare, that the for-profit companies would make this more efficient, less government spending, less waste, and less over-reliance on the welfare system. And the big part of all of this is that there would be more requirement for people to be looking for a job or be working in order to qualify for benefits. And who would verify that applicants are actually working? These for-profit companies. And so this is how our welfare system works today, in a very kind of American way. It is administered by private companies that you've never heard about, who are given lots of money from the government to dole it out to people in need.
So Reagan started this privatization train, and it was really President Bill Clinton who not only hopped on board that train, but got it accelerating to its destination, which was total privatization of a lot of social services in America.
And look at that. The Democratic Party actually did all the damage. It was the Democratic Party, not just Ronald Reagan. It was Bill Clinton. He also destroyed the American manufacturing industry. You know, we used to still make the majority of the socks in the world were made in fucking America until Bill Clinton. You know, since we're talking about manufacturing and textiles.
So that's the context here. It's been 45 years since this big experiment began of privatizing our welfare system. And I've always wondered, did this work? So that's sort of been the curiosity at the heart of this story. Is government more efficient? Are we saving money? Is this helping vulnerable populations in a more efficient way? The answer is In some cases, yes. Like there have been positive outcomes of outsourcing to contractors within the welfare
Okay, I can't wait to hear the examples.
system and public spending. A good example of that is food stamps that used to come in these paper coupons, but now are delivered electronically on a debit card.
That's because we didn't have credit cards back then. We didn't have credit cards back. They literally didn't exist. This is just an advancement of technology.
This is more secure, it's more efficient. It ensures that people use these for food. There are a lot of instances where private companies have
That is the example. By the way, that is a fucking terrible example because they siphoned so much fucking money from those goddamn debit cards. That is a dumb fucking example. Fuck you, Johnny Harris. You fucking idiot. Fuck you.
Made government spending more efficient, but the purpose of this video is to shine a light on the
The US did have credit in 1980. The first widespread use of credit card. When did credit cards become popular? It's like literally we didn't use credit cards. Like when did credit cards get connected to computers? It's like in 1973, MasterCard and National Bank Americard developed their own systems. That's what I'm talking about. Before that, you literally, anytime you used a credit card, they would have to pick out the phone and call the bank and sit on hold and be like, hi, I'm here with credit card owner Mike, and his number is blah, 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 and he's doing a charge for blah, 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 blah. They literally did that. And then they would take a pressing of the card. You guys are too young to remember this shit. The idea, like, this is... So, the idea, like, oh, it was debit card... Privatizing the debit cards was such an amazing privatization. No, that was an advancement in technology. That wasn't privatization. Credit cards and debit cards were existing as a technology that was developed outside that had nothing to do with food stamps becoming better. That wasn't a privatization of food stamps. That was just an advancement of payment technology that we then allowed corporations to sponge off of food stamps. Egypt signed a $235 contract with the U.S. to monitor their railway system. Yes, I saw that.
Many instances where private companies have gotten really rich off of this system in a way that has not benefited the most vulnerable and needy people in our country, the poor, the elderly, children in need, the disabled. So finally, the reason you clicked on this video, let's draw up this list of who gets rich off the poor. And for that, I'm going to need
9 a.m. 9:30
to look at all these papers, so we need more space. Let's go to the big table. Okay,
I hate this.
So the first one on our list is slightly adjacent to the privatization of welfare, but it follows the same incentives and dynamics. And it has to do with taxes. One of the ways that the government subsidizes the lives of lower income people is through a tax credit. So when you file your taxes, you show that you've been working, you've made money, but you didn't make that much money, and therefore you qualify for an earned income tax credit. If you have kids, it goes up and it kind of maxes out at around $7,000. This is a very simple thing. In a lot of countries, you like check a box and you get this refund or this subsidy to your life. But in the United States, it looks like this. This is a 45-page instruction manual about all the specifics on the earned income credit, something that should be so simple and that is a key way of helping lower income people live their lives. The tax code here in the United States is deathly complicated, intentionally designed to be so to make certain companies rich. And this is one way that works. I had a lot of feelings about this. I made a whole video on the New York Times about this very thing, but I didn't focus on this aspect of it. Because it's so complicated, low-income people who qualify for this credit don't want to fill it out themselves, and so they go to a tax preparer. Enter this guy. Well, not this guy specifically, but a guy like this, representing a company like this. Liberty Tax is one of many tax preparation companies that advertise to low-income people to come in so that they can prepare their taxes and get them in on the Earned Income Tax Credit. But we now know they do so using some pretty shady means. There's a lawsuit. Lawsuit. District of Columbia versus Liberty Tax Service. Liberty Tax was recently sued for luring low-income people by saying that they will prepare their taxes for them, only to deceive these customers by secretly skimming extra money off the top of their tax refund, which remember includes the Earned Income Tax Credit that is meant to subsidize their lives. Liberty Tax also gives out loans to people, saying that they can pay them back once they get their tax refund.
But what that really has done is create a market for high-interest fast cash products like refund anticipation loans or refund anticipation checks, which are basically just payday loans that are secured by the refund. And so this predatory.
And the other thing is, like, these payday loans are for like a week. It's absolutely dumb as fuck. It provides absolutely no value to the economy. It is a massive skim and is total scam bullshit.
The toy industry has grown to take advantage of the complexity of an incredibly important benefit that a lot of poor people count on every year.
These loans would often come with high interest rates and unexpected fees. In fact, the pricing in all of this has been kind of a black box, allowing Liberty Tax to take advantage of low-income Americans trying to get in on the benefit that they are entitled to because of this tax credit. Okay, and this is where I have to come clean. I worked for this company. Not for very long, and not in any high position. I was one of these Statue of Liberty guys. One winter, I was home from university waiting for a security clearance for an internship at NATO, and I needed money, and so I found this job being the Statue of Liberty holding this sign. I didn't know what the sign said, okay, but it probably said something like, "Need money today? Apply for a $500 to $6,250 easy advance." In other words, I was probably a part of luring desperate people in to get a bad loan or to have their tax refund skimmed by this corporation. I had no idea, and I'm sorry. Liberty is just one of many corporations who has gotten in on these schemes, targeting low-income people to try to get in on their tax credits. And to me, this is actually a failure of our tax system.
Hey guys,
this segment of the population.
It's just another beautiful day in New York.
Chat, Lolo made a post and he said something like, "It got my energy. I can't find it." Fuck. Oh, a mutuals only post. You can't see that, chat. You're not allowed to see that. Scrolling up, scrolling up.
This should be a very easy thing like it is in every other country. A box on a free government website that you can fill out in 5 minutes. But instead, we've got a privatized corporate middleman who is making all of this money off the poor. Okay, number 2, housing. So here in the US, instead of building big public housing complexes like they do in some countries and like we used to do, the privatized version of the American government gives vouchers to low-income people and allows them to go choose
That's not it.
a house, and the government will basically pay for a portion of their rent. This is called Section 8 housing. And there are landlords that specialize in renting to Section 8 tenants, getting this government subsidy voucher that goes to pay for the rent. But what you find is that some of these landlords jack up their prices because they know the government will pay for it. Like here in DC, an apartment that should cost $1,600 a month, the landlord might charge almost $1,000 more, like $2,500 a month, well above the market price, knowing that the government, who has poor oversight over this program, won't pick up on this and will
Damn, I can't find
subsidize that inflated price. Now, I'm not
The Fed rate just took a nosedive, Mike.
making this up. Those are real numbers from an investigation here in DC by the Washington Post, who found that the DC government is overpaying thousands of apartments to the tune of $1 million every month here in Little DC. But this is happening all over the country, enriching landlords while depleting the assisted housing fund, all while distorting the market. Like, this is not free market. This is a totally distorted thing. Number 3 on our list is corporate middlemen, which is kind of a big section. I'll try to work through it fairly concisely, but it's
I'm so confused by what Johnny is about. Yes, I believe he's a CIA asset, but the way he softballs these truths feels off. The answer is that he's controlled opposition. It's not very complicated, right? The purpose of Johnny Harris is he is what we call, I think it's called a limited hangout, or I can't remember the tactic, but basically they want Johnny Harris to have the most popular video on common left-wing topics. Like, that's the entire point of his video. He is controlled opposition. He's supposed to have the most. So, like, when we talk about, like, America overthrows governments, it's Johnny Harris video. Who gets rich off the poor? Johnny Harris video. Like, he's supposed to be at the top of, like, common left-wing topics or searches. They want a Johnny Harris video there as controlled opposition, soft peddling the US, soft peddling who's actually in charge, offering some sort of, like, liberal half measure or even no non-solution. That's the purpose of what Johnny Harris is doing. It's to prevent people from getting funneled to me, Hassan, etc. You know, like Chapo Trap House. Like, they want people there as blockers from actual progressive or actual socialist content. That's what he's literally there for. It's not even a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact.
kind of the biggest one here. This is where a lot of people get really rich off the poor. Remember from our history section just a few moments ago that Ronald Reagan shook up the welfare system by, instead of giving money directly to people in need, instead giving it to the states, who would then give it to a corporate middleman who would then distribute it. And that corporate middleman also had to kind of determine the eligibility of people, making sure they're working or they're looking for a job. And all of that is a lot of work, and these corporations were the ones to be doing it.
So these are the folks who are getting government contracts to act as government in running welfare programs. They're basically agents of the government. They're mercenaries for the public sector. They're making huge decisions that benefit the everyday lives of low-income people. One of these companies, for instance, was a company called Maximus, which is one of the largest welfare services providers today. They had revenues of about $88 million in 1995, and just a few years later, their revenues are already up to $500 million. And today, they're a $4.9 billion business.
Now, this was exactly the point for Reagan and his reformers. These corporate middlemen were supposed to be much more efficient in administering this government money. And indeed, they are for-profit companies, and they operate much more efficiently than the government itself, cutting costs and looking for ways to do things more efficiently. But let's remember, this is not like a normal corporation like McDonald's that is selling a product to a customer that can go somewhere else. Let's see what happens. A few years ago, Maximus took over Tennessee's health insurance program, state-run health insurance program. It's called Medicaid. And what you saw is that many children and elderly people very quickly were booted out of the program. They were found.
Yeah, they got them by basically they got these people off the program by doing what? They got them booted off the program by putting in paperwork barriers so that people who weren't conscientious about filling out the paperwork got kicked off.
Ineligible. There was a 23% increase in the number of uninsured children in the state. That's more than any other state at the time, 2018. It took me a while to get my head around this. Like, why would a for-profit company want to kick children and old people off of the state health insurance program? I'll explain in just a sec, but let's look at one more example. In 2016, Maximus took over the Medicaid program in Kansas. And soon thereafter, applicants started to see huge delays in their applications. Backlogs started to build up, which, remember what we're talking about here. This isn't abstract. This is vulnerable people, in this case, mostly elderly people, not being able to access their basic health needs for weeks and sometimes months because their application was pending for a very long time, meaning Maximus was working on it, but presumably very slowly. And that's because children and low-income people and elderly people are not Maximus's customer. They do not have an incentive to serve those people, partly because those people can't go anywhere else. Those people think that they're interacting with the government. They don't know who Maximus is, and mostly because their main job is to get more government contracts and then to cut costs so that they can capture as much of that government contract as profit.
Yeah, there you go. That's what privatization does. Congratulations. You don't save any money. You just have a bunch of the taxpayer dollars go to individuals who are basically feudal lords getting guaranteed profit.
So in this case, what that means is cutting staff, making it as cheap as possible to process these applications. This answers my question about why a company like Maximus would want to get people off the rolls, to deem them ineligible for these benefits, because it's cheaper for them. They are motivated to find people who do not qualify and to pare down their list so they have fewer people to work on, which is less cost for them. So yes, there is cost cutting and efficiency that's happening here, but it happens to be at the expense of vulnerable, needy people who the government is trying to give money to. Now, actually, I don't blame Maximus very much for this. I don't think they're bad people. I think they provide a very useful service in most cases. We should expect a corporation to behave like this. The definition of a for-profit corporation is someone who does everything in their power to make money for their company. That is their job. So without proper oversight and competition and regulation and performance review, these corporations should be expected to minimize the resources they have to put into processing applications and administering benefits. And another point of fairness here, if you look at the financials of Maximus, they're not some crazy profitable company. Yes, they bring in billions of dollars. They've captured a huge amount of this government services market. Their gross profit margin is 20%, which seems like a lot. But if you actually look at their net profit margin, which is kind of their more typical profit margin, it's like 3%. That's a pretty poor performance for a company. They're not insanely profitable.
I think people like Johnny Harris are actually, again, 2001 Mike is about to come out. If you are just a bureaucrat company, everybody who's getting paid as an employee is profiting because they're not doing anything productive. So you're saying, oh yeah, all the bureaucrats we had to hire, that's an expense. No, it's not. It's a no-show job. It is profit. It's pure profit. Every time you created a bureaucrat and they don't have to do anything, and they don't do anything productive for the economy, that's pure profit, but it gets to be called an expense on the balance sheet. So you have a whole swath of no-show, useless bureaucrat duplicators and with bullshit jobs profiting, and then on top of that, you have shareholders who are also profiting, who don't even have to show up. So you have an entire population of people that should not exist. But this requires you to like think about what is actually happening, as opposed to just accepting the like balance sheet as if that is an explanation of what the profit is. Actually fucking stupid. This guy's getting paid $850,000 in salary and $892,000 in incentive plan compensation. He's getting $8 million in stock awards. To kick people off of Medicaid, this guy is getting paid $8 million a year. Are you fucking insane? Barely profitable, guys.
CEO did make $7.3 million last year in full compensation, and they did spend over $1 million in lobbying and funding elections. My point here is corporate middlemen who administer welfare are not robber barons, and they're not running some corrupt scheme.
What the fuck are you talking about? You just proved they are. You just literally proved that they are. What use is this? Are you fucking stupid? See what I mean about these controlled opposition libs? Yes, they fucking are. They're literally robbing the government purse. They're literally barons. They are literally feudal lords being paid $8 million to take away healthcare from kids. These are demons from hell. If this entire company was wiped out, it would not change anything except get more kids healthcare.
But they are for-profit corporations who will cut costs where they can. And if they're not held accountable for doing that, the people who suffer are the people who are already vulnerable and needy in our country, which is what all these programs are meant to help.
Because they're one of only a handful of companies that are in this business, you can get away with a lot of behaviors that may not fly in a more competitive marketplace.
I remember interacting with these companies. I didn't know I was interacting with them until I started reporting the story, but when my son was like 1.5, he was diagnosed with autism, and we started to look around for services, realized our insurance didn't cover anything, so we went to Medicaid and we qualified. And my wife spent hours and hours on the phone with what I now know was a corporate middleman trying to work through these applications and processes. And it was mind-numbingly complicated and difficult. And the wait times were so long. And
I need to turn off my stream or I'm going to get permit. I need to turn off my stream or I'm going to get permit banned. Like legitimately. Americans are like irredeemably stupid. Like, because they watch this shit and they think it's smart. They watch this shit and they think it's fucking smart. You know, we could just have a few professional government employees who administer Medicaid for like almost nothing. Like that's how the Social Security worked. That's how Medicare worked. They administer it for like 1 or 2% of the expenses is spent on administrative costs. The government could do this about 1,000 times more efficient. And he's like pretending like this is some sort of thing. And we could just cut out all of this bureaucracy completely and just purge it. That's why Medicare for All saves $500 billion a year. Medicare for All saves $500 billion a year and 68,000 lives. This isn't just... how are you not cutting these people's heads off metaphorically, politically, who are against Medicare for All? Why aren't you people mad? I don't understand it. Why are you liberals not enraged? $500 billion a year and 68,000 American lives saved from Medicare for All, and you voted for Joe Biden. How? I don't get it. I don't get it. I can't understand you. I don't get it.
The paperwork and the hoops that we had to jump through. And I remember feeling a lot of anger at the inefficiency of the government. The government has no incentive to perform because we're not their customer. What I realize now is that I was dealing with a corporation. I was not the customer. Iz was not the customer. My son, Henry, who needed services, was not the customer. And in fact, complicated forms and more wait times and process is actually more business for these corporate middlemen. They have an incentive to sell more paperwork to all
Like,
of us.
I legitimately
to me,
don't get it. I don't get it. And by the way, when I say $500 billion a year, I'm not exaggerating. Medicare for all saves $500 billion a year. Research shows. Okay, no, this is. Let me find the studies. This is a Bernie Sanders. Studies have found the U.S. could save $500 billion annually in billing and administrative costs by moving to Medicare for all. $500 billion a year. $500 billion a year. Oh, okay. This article is gone. They took this article down. Cool. Here's a study. Medicare for all, a Lancet study. Medicare for all would save the country $450 billion a year, while preventing nearly 70,000 deaths. Like, you're defending these worthless corporate middlemen who are being paid $8 million a year CEO, and the result is 25% more kids are without health insurance. Why would you defend this system? Why the fuck would you defend this, liberal? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I cannot understand it. Do you just think I'm lying? Like, do you just think it's like, are you, what is wrong with you? Like, I don't get it. And this doesn't piss you off? It doesn't piss you off to be spending $400, $500, $600 a month for health insurance with a $9,000 deductible? It doesn't bother you? Like, what the fuck is going on with you people?
Is a distortion of what Ronald Reagan dreamt about, of corporations swooping in and making our government more efficient. Okay, that's corporate middlemen. Let's move on to number 4. Medicaid dentists. Now, I've had some positive experiences with Medicaid. When I was a freshly married, in my young 20s university student with no insurance, and we had...
There's a Yale study that Bernie used. Improving the prognosis of healthcare in the USA. Well, it's a study, guys. Now the liberals are finally going to believe me.
Our first baby, I got hit with a $10,000 bill from the hospital and freaked out and went to the billing department at the hospital, and they told me about this magical thing called Medicaid for someone like me who was very low income at the time. And lucky for me, whoever the benefits contractor in Utah was handled it very well, and it really saved my bacon. But if you look at all sides of Medicaid, you start to see entire industries that exist to take advantage of the Medicaid.
Liberals think it's smart to see something horrible and think it's just an unfortunate but necessary side effect of force of nature that is capitalism. Like, the fact that Johnny Harris had a $10,000 medical bill that was paid for by Medicaid, and he's not saying the words Medicare for all and get rid of and reform this shit by getting rid of it all, is unbelievable. And like, here's the thing. Like, I am against violence. I'm against the idea that somebody would go and start committing violence against us. I am against violence, okay? I am against violence. All right? Luigi is just my favorite character from Mario. I've been playing Mario since 1989, okay? I was the older brother, and I would let my younger sister play Mario, and I would play Luigi. Okay? This is not about Luigi Mangione. I promise.
Medicaid system. A good example of this is dentistry.
It's created an enormous business opportunity for some dentists who see that they can make a living treating exclusively Medicaid patients.
Unlike regular private insurance, Medicaid doesn't reimburse very much for dental procedures. So because of that, a lot of dentists
Ours is $700 a month, and we pay with a $15,000 family deductible, which means we pay out of pocket on top of our monthly premium. Yes, yes. The health insurance is just for if you get really super sick. And there's some other things too. Like usually maybe you can get discounts on prescription drugs. Maybe you can get checkups for free or nearly free. Maybe you get your vaccines for free. But you pay for health insurance in case you actually get seriously ill, because if you don't, you'll go bankrupt. So you're forced to pay this extortion that probably won't even matter, and most of it gets stolen by these middlemen.
just don't take Medicaid as an insurance. And on the other side, there are some...
I threw up the Johnny Harris rant on TikTok. It says it's not available. We'll get there.
Dentists that only take Medicaid.
By the way, if you post any of my shit on TikTok or any other place, I now have a new channel in my Discord called Mike TikToks. None of you have posted in there yet. I'm gonna add everyone. Fuck you. I get to do that. It's my server. Fuck off. And I've just had it. I've had it with liberals. I don't know what to say. Something's got to change. And I just see everybody just kind of going like, ooh, I'm going to elect a Democrat. Ooh. They're all AIPAC fucking ghouls. Something's got to change.
Specialize in appealing to patients who qualify for Medicaid, getting them in, and doing as many procedures as possible to get in on those.
You can't post to the server? Wait, what? Really? You can't post in there? Mods! You had one fucking job. I don't ask you to do anything. I don't ask you to show up a certain amount of time. I don't ask you to do a goddamn fucking thing. I asked the mods to make a TikTok channel. And they fucked it up.
Medicaid benefits. And once again, if we're talking rational corporate behavior and incentives, these offices will often target lower income or disabled or elderly patients who are less likely to advocate for themselves and against medically unnecessary procedures.
So inevitably what's happened over time is that this market has turned into a very exploitative one, where dentists have been prosecuted for charging for procedures that didn't exist or procedures that were completely unnecessary. For instance, there was a dentist in North Carolina who was prosecuted for having performed 17 root canals on a 3-year-old toddler.
And it's not just one bad apple in North Carolina. This is a lawsuit where the U.S. government settled.
It's working now.
with a company called Cool Smiles, and they are a Medicaid-specific dental franchise who had to pay close to $24 million because an investigation found that they were performing dental operations that were not medically necessary. They were taking advantage of poor patients in order to get more money from Medicaid. According to the lawsuit, they performed tooth extractions, gave out stainless steel crowns, did root canals on babies that did not need them. Like, there are multiple things really wrong with this. Obviously, exploiting a government system to deplete the Medicaid fund is...
Yeah, death penalty. If somebody does root canals on babies who don't need them, death penalty. Not very complicated.
One aspect, but performing, like, dental surgeries on people, root canals on babies for money is a level of greed and corporate exploitation that I cannot really get my head around. But again, in a...
What, bitch? This is capitalism, you fucking rat fuck. You think the system's good? Do you think this level of evil and corruption should get a slap on the fucking wrist? You know, Chad, I was thinking about how, you know, what happened in Cuba started with like, like 10 guys. The Chinese Communist Party started with like 10 guys. I don't know who those people are. But goddamn, I mean, why are Americans so fucking pathetic? And here's the thing, you know, if this depression happens and they also cut the government like they're trying to cut, I think the interest in my kind of politics is gonna explode. So I'm trying to keep myself. Basically, what's happening, chat, is I'm trying to keep myself in a holding. I'm in a holding pattern right now. I'm trying to keep myself from getting banned or arrested. And we're gonna go from here.
World where companies will maximize profits, this is to be expected if the incentive structure is set up that way.
Am I running for leadership at DSA LA? I think it's on Sunday. I don't really have. The problem is I haven't been involved that much. I would definitely show up. I just don't know anybody, you know, that's the thing. I haven't been involved, and I need to get involved. I need to get involved.
Let's get to number 5, which is similar to the dental clinics, but it has to do with kidneys. Here in the US, lower income people are disproportionately plagued with kidney failure, a disease where your kidneys fail and your blood can't be cleaned by your kidneys, so you need a machine called a dialysis machine to clean your blood for you. Luckily, since the 70s, the United States now heavily subsidizes people who need dialysis for their kidneys. And dialysis is meant to be a temporary intervention while you wait for a kidney transplant. There's always a long waiting list for a kidney transplant, so you're on dialysis until you can get a transplant, which increases your chances of living. It is a wonderful thing that the government subsidizes this because it saves a lot of lives. But inevitably, here comes the exploitation.
Overnight, it instantly created an industry opportunity to offer dialysis because now the government was going to pay for it.
One of these companies is called DaVita. I think they're the largest dialysis center company in the United States. And because of this set of incentives, we can start to piece together how...
Do you think there's a scenario where Trump, Republicans, Democrats do something so egregious the nation reacts in a way that swings the pendulum towards leftism? Yes. I think we're actually already there. The main thing that I would say, like, this is you want to hear my own, you know, kind of crackpot theory, is I think we're already there. The problem is we haven't had the rupture. So the Bernie Sanders kind of leftism of 2015 and on has not actually been given an opportunity during a period of profound capitalist crisis. 2008 was, you know, the recovery from 2008 was already done at that point. In fact, the Bernie Sanders movement only really grew in a period of relatively decent economic performance for capitalism when measured historically. We haven't had the opportunity to have the kind of Bernie Sanders post-Bernie left and plus a true economic collapse. Now, we had COVID, but because of the politics of the pandemic, we were able to get massive Keynesian stimulus and like they were handing out free money, for fuck's sake. Like it was we didn't have it wasn't a crisis of capitalism. It was a response to a pandemic, and they poured in a lot of government intervention, and it was bipartisan. And so we didn't really have like a questioning of capitalism. We haven't had another like really bad recession. And so I'm really curious what will happen when we have a really bad recession plus this kind of post-Bernie milieu. And that is the opportunity that I'm curious to see what will happen, right? And I think a lot of people, I think one of the biggest problems people have with political thought in general is we have a status quo bias, and we kind of think the way things are going is the way they're going to keep going. Like we have a hard time understanding what conditions will be like under like Black Swan or alternative situations, right? Like what if there's a big crash, the stock market declines 30%, inflation goes to 10%, 20% of people, 15% of people are unemployed, millions of people are losing their houses, you know, that is a different condition. And what I think is possible under that condition is a lot different than what I think is possible now. And I think, quite frankly, Donald Trump and the liquidationists that are in Congress right now, in the Republican right wing, they're setting us up for a Hoover style 2029, 2029 style crash. It would be funny if we had a crash in 2029. Just like we had a crash in 1929, like 100 years on the dot later, it would be really funny. Now, I don't know if we'll make it to 2029, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm seeing. And I think that the left is excessively tactical and not strategic. I've said this has always been a problem. Like the Sam Cedar left, which I think is kind of the majority of leftists in America, are Sam Cedar type leftists. And that they are obsessed with tactics and they have no strategic thought. So it's always like, what's the next bullet I should fire? Right? Everybody's obsessed over the next bullet, the next horse race, the next, primary, they're not talking about like building an army. They're not talking about logistics. They're not talking about like a massive strategic shift. It's all this like very small ball, I'm going to bunch you over to second base bullshit. And like, I don't think that that's wrong. I think tactics are incredibly important. In fact, I might even agree with almost every single tactical call he makes. But strategically, there's no vision. And that is the problem, is that the left is supposed to be about vision. And who's got vision? Who the fuck has vision? AOC? Vision of what? Bernie, vision of what? And I mean, like, policies are great. I love policies. I'm a policy wonk. But where's the vision? Where's the idea? And I would be willing to accept cringe fucking shit at this point. We don't even have cringe. The right, they're cringe as fuck. That's part of their strength. They're saying dumb, like, the one thing I'll say about somebody like Nick Fuentes and the right wing, at least they've got vision. Their vision is fucking evil and their vision is dumb as fuck and he's an idiot. But at least they have vision. What's the fucking vision of the left? There's no fucking vision. There's not even an idea. We're not even fantasizing about something. We don't even have that, for the love of fucking Christ. That's the crisis, is, of course we're not winning. We don't even have an idea of what winning would be. How come there are no leftist institutes? That's wrong. There are hundreds of right-wing institutes. There's plenty of left-wing things. But who funds left-wing institutions? There are two ways you could fund left-wing institutions. I'm going to explain it to you. The first way is memberships. The second way is labor, organized labor. Both of those, organized labor, I don't know if you've noticed, has been eating shit with both hands. Since organized labor it was castrated and cucked, and it's been on a fucking, it has been bleeding out from its ball sack, its empty ball sack for 40 fucking years. We don't have this shit anymore. They used to have what was called the Legislative Study Group. This was left-wingers in Congress. Maybe it was something, it had a different name, a slightly different name. Fuck. I can't remember what it was called. It was something like that. That's the problem with our kind. Even our dreams are small. I mean, that's where we are. I mean, it's just pathetic. My best Chinese friend, whom I'm in love with, told me today that we should need to rid the US of the capitalists. Oh, yeah. Very proud of the media bias chart my group put together shortly before our federal grant was terminated downstream of cuts of the National Endowment for Democracy earlier this year. What? No fucking way. This is a joke. This is someone shit posting. They're a follower of mine that I follow. They're obviously a leftist that are shit posting. You guys, come on. Don't try to fool me with a good shit post, okay? You're gonna embarrass me.
How they would behave.
And the thing again about dialysis is, like Medicaid dentistry, it's a volume business. The government pays dialysis centers per treatment, and last year was about $380 per treatment. So it is unfortunately in the interest of dialysis companies that run dialysis centers to keep those machines occupied as many hours of the day as they can, to cycle through as many patients as they can, because an empty dialysis machine is...
Have you seen the Westoids' new fixation bombing the Three Gorges Dam? Okay. Yes, I have, and I've been replying to this shit and making fun of these people. AI plane with like C-152's yoke. AI plane looks like fucking shit. They think the Three Gorges, like, basically Westoids understand that China is suppressing the US, and they're like, we should bomb the Three Gorges Dam, because if the Three Gorges Dam, like, you know, collapsed, it would kill, you know, 10 to 100 million people or whatever. And because they're downstream of it. If you want an understanding of how important the Three Gorges Dam is, the Three Gorges Dam produces 20 times the electric power of the Hoover Dam. The Three Gorges Dam produces 20 times the power of the Hoover Dam. 20 times the electric power of the Hoover Dam. So this is the biggest dam in the world, obviously. And so they're like, we're gonna nuke the Three Gorges Dam and kill a bunch of civilians. Now, you know, obviously, just so you understand, this is why China has the military it has, because Western white chauvinists are insane. And thankfully, China has the ability to target every American city. So we don't have to worry about the United States doing something this fucking insane because they have nukes. So the Hasanabi Doctrine is in full effect. They can't do it.
$180 at the
Also, the Chinese military is going to be more powerful than the American military imminently.
Okay, so a company making sure that their machines are being used at full capacity is actually, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. That is a company just using its resources efficiently, administering a life-saving treatment. But that's kind of just the beginning. What you see in these for-profit dialysis centers is less staff to help with the treatment, and you see higher death rates. And this is where it becomes so clear where the failure is. you see 17% fewer referrals for kidney transplant. Meaning these people who are on a temporary dialysis intervention, who are supposed to be waiting for a kidney transplant, are kept on the machines longer because a for-profit company makes money the longer they are in the chair. So why would they refer them to get a
Biggest dam in the world so far. Is it China building a bigger one? Yes.
kidney transplant when they make more money keeping them on the dialysis treatment?
I slightly hope the U.S. tries to go to war with China just to get its shit pushed in. We already did, and we lost, and that's when they were like poor as fuck. We already tried to fight them, and we lost, and that's when they were poor as fuck. Now they're ahead of us, and like they're ahead of us in every fucking measurable way. Fighting China would be absolutely insane.
Is less staff to help with the treatment, and you see higher death rates. And this is where it becomes so clear where the failure is. You see 17% fewer referrals for kidney transplant. Meaning these people who are on a temporary dialysis intervention, who are supposed to be waiting for a kidney transplant, are kept on the machines longer because a for-profit company makes money the longer they are in the chair. So why would they refer them to get a kidney transplant when they make more money keeping them on the dialysis treatment? If someone gets a transplant, that is a lost customer.
Unfortunately, it's an option that's being denied a lot of people because it's in the financial interest of dialysis centers to keep someone in dialysis rather than, quote, losing them to transplant.
Now, DaVita has paid like $1 billion in settlements and for some of this behavior, including $350 million they had to pay after being sued by the US government for paying doctors to go out to recruit people to come to their dialysis centers so that they could corner the market in certain areas. They had to pay another $450 million because they were found billing the government for medicine that they had received and just thrown out, and charged the government anyway so that they could get reimbursed. All of this, once again, further draining the money that is allocated by our government to help people in need. And finally, number 6, the last on our list, the one I'm deeming the most egregious because it has to do with children. And not just any children, the most vulnerable children in our society. Specifically children who have been removed from their family because of abuse, abandonment, or death. Foster children. If a foster child loses a parent or is physically or mentally disabled, the federal government entitles them to around $700 a month to subsidize their lives. This is one that goes straight from the federal government, from the Social Security Fund, straight to these children, or at least it should. But here comes the corporate middlemen once again. States will often hire corporate middlemen like Maximus, who is in fact a part of this, to look through the databases of foster children to identify which of those children qualify for this benefit, meaning which of these children have a dead parent or are physically or mentally disabled. And then to go through the process of diverting that money away from the children and into state coffers. The state says they're doing this to help supplement the foster care program in their state to help boost their budget. But what feels very icky about this to me is that it creates, once again, a business opportunity for a for-profit company who is incentivized to scour these databases looking for children who qualify.
How about we scour the databases to give these children the money and their families? Icky, guys.
For this benefit to divert the money away from them and towards the state. And Maximus gets paid a fee to
Maximus gets paid a fee.
do this. They're incentivized to do this as a service for the state, to look through these databases and look for children who qualify. There's one NPR report from a while back that reports that the corporate middleman Maximus, who we've talked about at length here, and who I will probably get sued by, would get $1,600 per child that they found who qualified for this benefit. And remember, a child who parents are dead or who has a physical or mental disability who's entitled to around $700 a month to supplement their very difficult life. If Maximus finds that child and diverts that money into state coffers, Maximus gets paid $1,600. That was in Alaska. Oh, but it's still going on. In 2018, Washington State worked with Maximus to get $6.89 million of foster children's money. Wisconsin got $4.13 million from their foster children, thanks again to the services of Maximus. Illinois, $18.7 million from foster children. Illinois didn't work with Maximus in this case, but another similar corporate middleman called Diversified Services Network to do the same thing. None of these companies want to be known or spoken out loud. They just sort of operate as like a proxy for the government. This is what they do. This money is being diverted from going directly to the foster children to going into the statewide foster care program. So it still is benefiting those children indirectly, but it feels wrong to me because this money was intended to benefit them directly. These are
death penalty. Death penalty.
are the most
Any
vulnerable.
society that doesn't have this level of evil corruption be punished, let alone rewarded, is insane.
Children in our society, this money is entitled to go to them. Okay, so that was kind of awful. I learned a lot about how the welfare system works and what privatization means.
Yeah, and that's why you're in favor of more privatization. As a neoliberal Democrat, I love privatization. Now that I've heard about privatization, I love it. I want more of it. Vote for Kamala Harris. Whee! Like, what the fuck is going on?
I also learned that there are situations where this makes a lot of sense.
Like what?
I didn't go into the full evaluation of privatization versus not. I don't think that was the scope of this video.
Oh, well, but I guess the conclusion is it works. I just haven't found it yet.
So what I've been trying to do here is look at places where in our vast welfare system, profit-seeking corporations have found ways to exploit that system to make money at the expense of vulnerable populations that are entitled to that money, who we, the taxpayer, pay to help supplement their life so that they can have a better life. Now, what can we do about this? Is this just totally hopeless? The answer is no.
How do we fix the situation? Well, you know, there's an old saying that the first rule of holes is to stop digging. And in this case, the first rule would be to stop privatization. The industry has kind of gone under the radar,
how about instead of stopping, how about we nationalize these corporations and we claw back every single ounce of compensation paid to any executive, and we also arrest them until they pay it all back.
Unmonitored for decades now, and we don't know how big the problem is, and we can't tackle it unless we get some sense of how much money is going to this, the amount of drag that the government is experiencing from the poverty sector. And I think that's the first step, one of the first steps to take.
I believe that there's a version of privatized contractors administering public services and welfare that is responsible and
you fucking scum! This is why he's here. This is why he's here. Your belief is fantastical. It's nonsensical and it's bullshit. Fuck you for this conclusion that has no supporting evidence. This is the point of this fucking video. This propaganda conclusion
actually works for serving the vulnerable populations it's intended to. To do that, it will require much more oversight and regulation that takes into account all of these incentives.
How about we get rid of these corporations completely and we just hire professional bureaucrats in the civil service who have to publish this information publicly so it could be vetted and it could be examined by scholars and outside watchdog groups. How about we just have professional bureaucrats who do it and we have the information be transparent? But no, we need to have executives who get paid $8 deny children health care. Yeehaw!
Corporations like adults who are going to find whatever loophole they can in whatever system to make money, and closes those loopholes. Also, if we're going to call this privatization, we need competition, real competition, not these near monopoly massive companies that kind of own entire sectors of public spending. And in all of this, I think we should reevaluate how much profit should play a role in these companies' incentives. California is also working on a profit cap, specifically for the dialysis centers, making it so that they don't even have the ability to profit as much as they do. Now, unsurprisingly, this was fought tooth and nail with over $100 million from dialysis centers, and the Proposition 8 was shot down. But it's a great policy recommendation, and it begs the question, how much profit should a corporation that is administering public welfare be entitled to? But ultimately, none of this will change unless the customer demands more, and the customer in this case is the government. If the government does not measure and demand better performance, these companies will not do better. The government seems to not be demanding a lot of change on the whole. There's a trend towards more and more privatization in things like Medicaid and other benefits. Our belief in the market has allowed us to be blind to some of these failures. And my worry is, as we continue to privatize without plugging some of these gaps, without fixing some of these loopholes, we are enabling these companies to exploit those loopholes. And as we've seen, they will do it. They will find ways to continue to get rich off the poor.
Imagine how much brain rot you have to think someone should think about capping how much money someone should make off 6 people and neglected children. Like, I think some people should make money off 6 people and neglected children. I think that some people should make money. They're called doctors and social workers who are being paid a wage to take care of the people directly. That's the only people that should, quote, make money off of this shit. I don't need to have a private corporation that exists to deny kids needed care. Do you see how much, and this is all downstream of the fact that we have a system focused on, what is it? Means testing. We need to have all these systems so we can deny people. Oh, did you make $41,000 this year? Well, then your children don't get Medicare. You fucking rich bastard, greedy. We have to means test. You made too much money. Instead of just going, hey, everybody needs healthcare. Why don't we just have a system where the government pays for all medically necessary healthcare? We'll collect taxes as a society, and we'll pay for a robust system to take care of everyone. And we go by what is medically necessary. Thank you, Vio. Making fun of Elon palate cleanser. I mean, honestly, I'm not really in a humorous mood, but give me a second. Thank you, Vio. He gave me some oatmeal, chat. I'm eating like a horse today. Absolutely fucking pathetic. If this is pissing you off, chat, make sure you sign up for the Fighting Oligarchy tour. Make sure you RSVP. I'm gonna be there tomorrow. It's just a pathetic fucking... It's so pathetic. Johnny Harris is dog shit. I fucking hate that loser. His video is dog shit. He fucking sucks.